Hi guys, my name is Beatrice Alba Silva, and I will be talking about my four sources and my paper for our History 325 class, Immigration and Ethnicity in America. So to start off, I actually have five sources. Recently, I added a fifth one, but I will cover that. My first source is Crossing the Rio Grande, An Immigrant's Life in the 1880s. It was written by Luis Gonzaga Gomez. He was a Mexican immigrant to Texas in 1884. This is mostly, it's kind of a different story of immigration, because when it comes to Mexican immigration, and that's why I really like this one, because he was an educated man. A lot of the Mexican immigrants that I found were, I mean, they were labor workers, which was normal, which is great. But he was, Luis Gomez, he was very educated. So he was working as like bookkeeping and doing all these things. And he actually was one of the prominent push, like he pushed a lot for opening a college in Kingsville, Texas, which actually became the uh, Texas A&M in Kingsville. So that's really cool, because he had a lot of influence with that. He was big on getting an education. He was big on making sure his children had education, his grandchildren had education, his friends, his workers. So throughout his story, like in his narrative that he writes himself, his autobiography, he talks about that stuff. He's about respect, all these things, but he was very much about education. So that's his account, and it's very, very interesting. So he had a little bit of a different experience as an immigrant, but it was still really cool to know that not all of them were just trying to come over as take everything that they can from the U.S. But it's funny whenever he says that when he came at the age of 19, he says, and I quote, he's like, I had one goal in mind: to work and accumulate a fortune if at all possible. So that was what he wanted. So that's what he had in his mentality at that time. But at the end of the day, he ended up doing even greater things. So that's my first source, Mexican immigrant. My second source is Benno Levi. He was a Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany, and this is written in The Sweetness of Freedom: Stories of Immigrants. This book has a lot of different immigrants from Italy, from Hungary, Finland, and all these other immigrants, but the one I chose was a Jewish refugee because his story is extremely interesting. He's been in other books, he's written his own book, he's in museum, like the little things that he part of who he was. So he was very interesting. Basically, he came to the United States in 1935 with his sister and his brother. So they actually came with the German Jewish Children Aid Society, which is something that they had that you could basically apply for, and then you could send your kids over to America, but just your kids. So they were without their parents for a little bit, but their parents ended up coming over and meeting them in 1938. When he first moved, it was in 1935. So for 3 years, they were without their parents, which ended up being really good because they were put in an orphanage home. So then they got to learn a lot of stuff. So his story is really awesome because he was basically an immigrant that came from something that he never went to, through any of the Holocaust. He was right before all of it. So that was so good, that America could do that for them. And he said that he mentions that he was homesick when he was on his way over, but as soon as he went to New York City, he says, and I quote, on our arrival on January 8th, 1935 in New York, the most exciting city in the world, was an event that we had eagerly anticipated and fully satisfied all our expectations.